Let's see how fast and easy it is to get a carbon footprint and learn the climate impact of almost anything that you can see in your browser: goods, services, business activities, etc. In this case, you can see I have the extension installed, but I don't actually have an account. So we're going to go ahead and create an account. Pick an email and a password. Hit enter. Double check your verification code. And there we go. We are ready. So in this case, I'm looking at some tea. I'm drinking a lot of tea while building the product, and I need to refresh my stock of English breakfast. So all we have to do is find the product that we're interested in, hit the button in the extension, and then in a few seconds, what we should see is a precisely matched estimate of the carbon footprint and the climate impact for, in this case, a 16-ounce bag of English breakfast loose leaf tea. And there we have it. So you can see the carbon footprint is just under 6 kilos of CO2 equivalent. We could tell you that that happens to match a common reference product, cooking oil. In this case, what we do for the reference products is pull a list of the cost of living items that are used to calculate the inflation basket for consumer products here in the US and then overseas as well, depending on your geography. And we give that as an example of and a reference for the carbon footprint there. And then we can also tell you what the climate impact is. And so here you can see that this is the long-term effect of that carbon being emitted into the atmosphere, and then changing the weather and the economy, and what it would cost essentially to recoup, right, or to recover from the impact of that amount of carbon that's emitted. Here we have specifics on the item itself. We can actually take a quick look at the more detailed full analysis. Not everybody wants to see that all of the time, but there is additional depth and information that's available on the website. So we generate a carbon footprint and a readout for that particular item that you're looking at. In this case, the AI reads it as organic English breakfast black tea, sold in bulk loose leaf form. And we can see here that the cost to offset that is actually only 12 cents. In many cases, it's quite reasonable compared to the cost of the item itself, and or we can remove that amount of carbon directly from the atmosphere, as opposed to, for example, not emitting it, which is typically what you see with the offset pathway. We can remove that directly for $2.67. I'm just going to show you really quickly that you can set up offset, that immediate action, by adding it to the CarbonGuru offset cart. And that's easily visible here in the pop-up, and you can see there that same item, English breakfast loose leaf tea, 5.8 kilos, 12 cents to offset. We could go to the offsets cart right away, but actually I need to buy a little bit more tea. And so what I'm going to do is remove that from my CarbonGuru cart. We'll come back to that in just a second. If you are interested in sharing or educating, then there are a whole set of sharing tools that are available here. So you can go right from your analysis in a couple of seconds to sharing what you've learned and seen, the footprint for that item, that good, that service, that business activity if you want to. We'll show you that later. There's a couple of options for sharing there. So with all the items that I need in my shopping cart, I can get footprints, learn the climate impact, and see what it costs to offset those as a batch, almost as quickly as a single item. And you can see here that the extension is congratulating me on analyzing my first footprint. That's what happens when you set up a new account. Again, I just need to push the button, And in a couple of seconds, what we should see coming back is a readout of the carbon footprint and the climate impact for the cart overall, and then each of the individual items in there. And there you can see it has a list, 5 items. It reads the prices, pulls their product descriptions, and then we give you some insight into the method and the approach for the analysis that's happening. And you can see that there are some snippets of the descriptions and the analysis information that's being used to calculate those carbon footprints. We'll get an overview as soon as it works through all of the individual items, and you can see there that your list of carbon footprints is pretty much fully populated. And it'll give you a breakdown of them individually. And then here is the finalized list of all of the items in the shopping cart. In this case, several different kinds of teas I need to stock up. It's been a while since I've ordered. For folks who are interested in the specifics of the analysis, you can follow the link and you will see the full set of data for all of the individual items and then a batch readout for that shopping cart of teas as well. What I'm going to do is take advantage of the cart level offset function, and I'm going to pop all of those items into my CarbonGuru offset cart. You can see there it says it's added 5 items. If you want to double check that, you can always see what's in your offset cart here in the pop-up. And then I'm going to go ahead and purchase those items right now. Lots of folks comparison shop before they buy, and Amazon is a great place to do that. CarbonGuru actually works very well at taking in product info from most of the major global e-commerce, retailer, and digital shopping sites. Amazon's a great example of a platform that CarbonGuru works well with. So let's see what happens when we run an Amazon shopping cart with a couple of items. There you can see it's picked up all 3. Found the tea right away. It's pulled the product descriptions and prices. What will come back in just a few seconds are the carbon footprints that are calculated for those items. You can see that the individual items, the analysis populates essentially as they come through. There's the final total. So 10 kilos of carbon, CO2 equivalent, $2.69 an impact. We can see the details on that session. It'll give us a summary of all the items in the cart. And then we can take a look at any of the individual if we're curious. So you get the same full in-depth readout. This is tea and coffee. There's the AI explaining the analysis results and the mapping. Looks like our price comparison is pretty much complete. I have a coupon from the seller, so I'm going to buy direct from them, not from the platform. CarbonGuru reads not just live carts and products, but orders, receipts, invoices, essentially all of the documentation and the information that you'll get after the purchase and after the transaction. This actually is a great way to make sure that you understand what you're buying. And you can see and understand the climate impact of all of the things that you're buying. In this case, what we'll do is hop back to that original merchant and get a carbon footprint from the order page itself, or the order detail. Behind the scenes, it's the same processing. So the AI reads and finds the items, identifies them, matches them to that EPA model, and then it should give us a pretty quick set of carbon footprints for, in this case, these 5 different kinds of tea that I bought. And you can see those analysis results coming through. It is a learning system. You may have caught the notification about it being in learning mode. And so here what it's doing is recognizing a new particular type of input page or information source. It's going to pass that back to the AI and optimize the processing and the product information identification and extraction that happens behind the scenes. So you can see the system is learning right now particularly how to make sense of and do analysis on this particular information source. So next time it'll be faster. So there's a network effect here, and we can see that for this particular order of tea from this retailer, the total carbon footprint is 14.1 kilograms of CO2e. As a comparative, that's equivalent to an optometrist visit. So again, we have products and services covered, and that is one of those cost of living consumer price index reference pieces. And the climate impact of that is $3.78 in total. We can add that to our offset cart with the push of a button. So let's go ahead and do that. And again, you can confirm and see exactly what's in your offset cart anytime you want using the pop-up. So here we can see those same 5 items. And now that we have gone ahead and completed the purchase of the original item itself, we've bought the tea. Let's take a look at the actual offsets cart. So we can see how quick and easy that is. So here we get a readout of the items themselves. So there's the different varieties of tea. We get an individual breakdown of the carbon footprint and the climate impact for each of those items. What's happening here is we are using the preferred offset type that is mapped back to this particular user account. So there's a whole catalog of different kinds of offsets and removal that are available. You can read and see information about that in the full catalog here on the website from the offsets and removals option in the navigation menu. Here it's showing us that it's going to be this particular one, which is actually the impact portfolio, which is a bundle of offsets. Total cost for that is going to be approximately 40 cents. Now, you'll see when you are here in the shopping cart view that there is a minimum purchase, and that is because there are certain required amounts or increments. So not every offset provider or individual removal project will allow you to purchase a fractional amount of carbon. That's where you can see that we're transitioning from essentially the large-scale business model to or the personal model, where you can offset individually and incrementally for the particular items and activities that are related to your life. So in this case, the minimum purchase that actually can be processed for the amount of offset or removal that we want is $1. So there's a quick option to add essentially a supplement, call it an adjustment item, to bring you up to that $1 minimum that can be processed. So that brings us to a subtotal of 53 cents for, in total, 20 kilograms of carbon. So it's gently rounded up because you can't buy less than 1 kilogram at a time. Climate impact for that is $3.78. So as they say, it's a bargain because we are avoiding $3.78 worth of climate impact damage for just $1.02. Let's go ahead and proceed to checkout. CarbonGuru has most of what you would think of as the familiar digital payment options. In this case, there are express checkouts from PayPal, Google Pay, Venmo, Apple Pay, etc. You can direct enter your preferred method should you choose to. We're going to go ahead and proceed with PayPal. So it's your standard one-button purchase. And here our order is complete. We get a detailed readout of what we have taken for action. So here you can see again a footprint by footprint, item by item breakdown. So 4.2 kilograms of the CO2 offset from the impact portfolio actually maps specifically back to that Hu Air Tea, the Earl Grey, has a slightly lower footprint, 3.09 kilograms of CO2. So you can see from that bundle of carbon offset that we purchased, the mapping back to the specific original items. And then here's that adjustment item, which is that roundup for the minimum required purchase. Here then are the details. So actually in this case, because we had to round up a bit, because we're only allowed to buy in whole kilogram quantities, etc., for the $1.02 that we spent on the actual offsets themselves, we have offset almost $6 in climate damage. So the ratio, again, is pretty good. The offsets are typically quite high leverage in terms of the impact that you can have in a positive sense via the actual cost of what would happen to the climate itself. This is the details, so you can see here all the transactions records, etc. This is a preview of the specific carbon credit retirement certificate that you get. So the offsets, in this case, coming from a provider called CNOT, and this is the receipt, if you will, right, or proof of purchase. This is your certificate. So these are all documents that are permanently associated with your orders in your order history in your account in CarbonGuru. You can access those, display those anytime that you want, and you can also directly download the PDF itself. We'll take a look at the certificate for reference. This is issued by and from CNOT, which is the umbrella provider that builds and manages those portfolios of offsets. And so what you can see here is the full detail from CNOT on the constituent individual offsets and offset projects and removal projects that comprise or make up the order. In this case, this is the CNOT order number that you're getting, right? And so you can see that of that 20 kilogram total, a different proportion came from these different kinds of offset projects, and you get full depth and detail on them. So the Oxford type, is it a technology-based reduction, for example? Is it a type 2 nature-based reduction, right? You get the location, and then you will see full traceability, auditability, etc. There's a technical term for this, management verification, that sort of thing in the carbon credit space. We'll take a quick peek at a couple of these pieces of information, just as an example to see what they look like. These are the mainline registries. So Vera, Gold Standard, in this case, Puro is another prime registry. And then you can see all of the auditing and management documentation for each individual project as it's updated live. And that often includes precise geography information, so background on the project itself, where and what it is, and then you'll see a full audit history that's leading up to the issuance and then the retirement of those carbon credits. So there's great depth of info here. And this is all posted publicly, so you can see these are in the public global registries. This is Gold Standard. Over here is the Puro registry. They all have a slightly different interface. They're giving you very similar or parallel detailed information to support that auditing and confirmation perspective. All right, so once you have completed an order, you can actually see your history of orders and the impact as a quick condensed visualization here in what we call the impact widget. In this case, this account is used for a lot of testing, and so comparatively there's a very large footprint associated with this. And then we give you the climate cost, right? So the social cost of carbon, the climate impact cost. The number is very high for this. The visualizations actually change, so you can grow and feed the tree, if you will, over time with every order that you post. But here's a quick look at some more of the order depth and detail. So every account has a complete history for all of the orders that you've posted, and that links back to the individual item itself. And so when we take a look here, you will see that the history of that item marks it accurately as offset on July 6, 2026. And it's reflected here in this recent orders readout. There's a dashboard. So every account for each individual user has a full history and some visualizations of not just the number of footprints and the number of items and the total aggregate footprint, etc., but the frequency, how often you footprint, the primary categories, the geographic locations of these, right? The associated EPA model emissions factors. So there's a moderate amount of detail that's surfaced here in aggregate in some. There's a global dashboard as well, so you can see for each account there's an individual dashboard. And then here we have a global dashboard. And so this lets you take a peek at what's happening within and across the community of CarbonGuru folks. And so you'll see CarbonGuru can analyze almost anything that you can see within your browser, in essence. So as an example of how that works and some of the different capabilities for easy input and carbon footprint analysis, let's take a look at something that might seem a little whimsical, but if you're in the mood to drink tea, makes sense. I have a middle schooler who's into vintage Star Trek, and one of the things that my middle schooler discovered was that Captain Picard from Star Trek The Next Generation was famously a drinker of Earl Grey. And you can see here that we are going to get a footprint for a reissue of the special design Picard teacup set that was available during the original run of the show and apparently is being sold once again. You may have noticed that the input there was actually just selecting the text itself. This is one of the fastest and the most accurate ways to get a carbon footprint. You don't even actually need to hit the button down here that you see from the extension in every case. You can actually just select any arbitrary set of text on any page, one product, multiple products if you're interested in and need to compare them, and you'll get the same AI processing for the information that you select. So this comes through as the Picard teacup set, 6.4 roughly kilograms of CO2 equivalent. Climate impact is $1.72. You don't always see a reference product from that basket of consumer cost of living items, again for the US or globally, depending on the geography that you're coming from. In this case, what that means is that there's not a precise reference product on file that aligns with this footprint. So we always try to be accurate with CarbonGuru, and so we have a threshold for when we show you a reference product. And in this case, there's not one currently in the library. We do expand the set of reference products that's available regularly. But there's not one that comes back from the reference product engine in this case. So now that we have tea and a cup to drink it in, let's take a look at what would be considered a service. So the promise is almost anything bought, sold, or processed. And that includes activities, business activities, etc. When I searched for tea ceremonies, this popped up. It's an event at the Four Seasons Hotels. And it's a good example of when, where, and how that flexible input option can help us quickly map and understand the carbon footprint for an activity, not just a thing that you would buy physically as a product. So you can see we select the text on the page, and then the CarbonGuru icon appears. We get a little affordance there. A helpful tip says get carbon footprint. We push the button, and that starts analysis. Process is the same. It extracts the information, identifies the item, identifies its cost, interprets and describes the most specific and relevant characteristics in order to enable the life cycle analysis, mapping, and modeling. And then it will give us back the carbon footprint as soon as it's calculated. Let me clear the texture so we can see what we had to start with. And here's the result. So we get the full source attribution, and we can see the details of the analysis in just a second. This is a tea ceremony at the Four Seasons Hotel. Cost is $187. Estimated carbon footprint is 36 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. Let's check out that more detailed analysis to see exactly how accurately it was able to classify and categorize. So here you can see that the model does include almost any and every business activity, not just physical products. This comes back as a traditional Japanese tea ceremony, cultural recreational service provided by a guide or expert. And in the model that is used for reference, the match is on tourist guide services. And here's the fully AI synthesized description given the original product info. So that is the context or the background that was used for this reasoning that you see here. And that's a private 1-hour traditional Japanese tea ceremony experience conducted by a tea expert at Shakusui Tei. Apologies for those who speak Japanese if my pronunciation is off base. Offered by the Four Seasons Hotel. Let's double check and see how accurate that information extraction was. So remember that description here while we take a look at the source. And you can see it's correctly identifying the actual name of the tea house, that it is an expert and a guided service, and that the duration is 1 hour. So it looks like the extraction was pretty close and spot on for this one. Not everyone can make it to the Four Seasons in Kyoto. And so if you're maybe on the West Coast, in Seattle, just a little closer to where CarbonGuru is based in Boston, then this might be a tea ceremony that you can take in. And let's see how this maps. So this is a good example of what we would call unstructured input. And you can see here there's a somewhat detailed description of the ceremony itself. And that includes that it is a reservation required event, the price of the tickets, etc., etc., etc. So we've seen the text selection option. What I'm going to do is ask CarbonGuru to read and interpret the entire page. And there it is identified a tea ceremony and a ticket price of $15. We'll see what the carbon footprint is in just a couple of seconds. So we can double check the mapping, but the initial estimate is 1.17 kilos of carbon with a climate impact of 31 cents. And the reference product there is, and I always find these interesting, I learn a lot by looking at these, a pound of fresh strawberries is the closest comparable product to that. We give you that in a couple of different places and locations. You can see that showing up here with all of the other recently mapped items in the list of carbon footprints here in the extension. So let's explore sharing. I picked Blue Sky. So if you've signed into your sharing account, you can directly from the analysis result pick the platform, and the engine will automatically build for you what we call a preview card. And this contains sort of the essence of the carbon footprint analysis. Here it's showing the footprint itself, the climate impact, and then the suggested offset and removal options costs. It provides a link back to the source footprint itself. And for folks who are interested in managing privacy, whenever you choose to share an item like this, you are, as a default, setting it to be published, which means that someone can follow this link that is included in the suggested text for what would be posted to the social network or shared out to the destination, because you can send to email and other systems as well as those to common social networks. So we'll post that on Blue Sky just with the push of a button, and we can see it live right here. You can also copy the link directly and or send an email. You'll note that the offset status of this item is not offset. So some folks will share before they offset or remove. Some folks will share after, depending on how you want to see the status of the item identified in public. So that preview card in your platform will show accurately at the time of publishing whether or not that item is offset.